Jai Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Gopijana Balava Girivanadari Gopijana Balava Girivanadari Jasodanandana Vrajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Vrajana Ranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Gopijana Balava Girivanadari Jasodanandana Vrajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Vrajana Ranjana Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Boom Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Jai Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Pariva Jakacharya Satishishamanis Divine Grace of Children Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Jagaguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Kota Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Nam Char Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Shri Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Vrindavan Dham Ki Mathura Dham Ki Dwarka Dham Ki and Davadi Dham Ki and Jagannathpuri Dham Ki Chamunamai Ki Chamunamai Ki Gangamai Ki Tulsi Maharani Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Sambhira Bhakti Vindi Ki Srila Prabhupada Ki Radha Giridhari Ki Shri Krishna Sankirtana Jaga Ki Gopremanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the divine lotus feet of Sri Guru and Gauranga. Krishna Swadamo Bhagate Damiganadi Bisaha Kalandasa Samesha Paranarko Nadodata Naranamaskacha Naram Shaivam Narotama Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet. The Bhagavatam is as brilliant as the sun. It has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied with knowledge, religion, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of the age of Kali should get light out of this Purana. Before beginning our study of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should first offer our respects to the personality of God Narayan, to the Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, the goddess of learning, Mother Saraswati, the author, Srila Vyasadeva, and my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are on text 14, chapter 4, text 8. Canto 8, right. And we are summarizing and the pastimes of Gajendra, which is the elephant, king of the elephants, who was formerly a almost self-realized. I actually, well, we'll get there in a minute. Etan Maharaja Taverito Maya Krishnanubhavo Gaja Raja Mokshanam Svargyam Yashayam sorry about that. Kali Kalmasapaham Dushvapna. Yeah, that's right. Nasham Kuru Varya Shrinvatam. Etan Maharaja Taverito Maya Krishna Nubhavo Gajaraja Mokshanam Svargyam Yasyayam Kalikalmasapaham Dushvapna nasham kuru varya shrinvatam. Etan maharaja taverito maya. Krishna nubhavo gajaraja mokshanam. Svargyam yastyayam kalikalmasapaham. Dushvapna nasham kuruvaya shrinvatam. Etan maharaja taverito maya. Krishna nubhavo gajaraja mokshanam. Svargyam yasyayam kalikalmasapaham. Dushvapna nasham kuruvaya shrinvatam. Krishna nubhavo gajaraja mokshanam. Svargyam yasyayam kalikalmasapaham. Dushvapna nasham kuruvarya shrinvatam. Etan maharaja taverito maya. Krishna nubhavo gajaraja mokshanam. Svargyam yasyayam kalikalmasapaham. Kuruvarya shrinvatam. Etan maharaja taverito maya. Krishna nubhavo rajakshanam. Svargyam yashayam kalikalmasapaham. Dushvapna nasham kuruvaya shrinvatam. Vaishnavis. Etan maharaja taverito maya. Krishna nubhavo gajaraja mokshanam. Svargyam yasyayam kalikalmasapaham. Dushvapna nasham kuruvaya shrinvatam. Etan maharaja taverito maya. Krishna nubhavo gajaraja mokshanam. Svargyam yashapam salikalasapaham. Dushvapna nasham kuruvaya shrinvatam. Etat, this, Maharaja, O King Parikshit, Tava, unto you, Iyedita, described, Maya, by me, Krishnanubhava, the unlimited potency of Lord Krishna, by which he delivers a devotee. It's not a race. Gajaraja Mokshanam, delivering the king of the elephants. Svargyam, giving elevation to higher planetary systems. It's not a death march either. Yasyaham, increasing one's reputation as a devotee. Kalikal masa apaham, sorry about that. Try it again. Kalikal masa apaham, diminishing the contamination of the Kali Yuga. Dusvapna nasam, counteracting the causes of bad dreams. And in Kali Yuga, it's even worse when you wake up. You don't know which one's the bad dream or reality, so-called reality. Where were we? Kudavarya, O best amongst the Kurus. Shrinvatam, of persons who hear this narration. O King Parikshit, I have now described the wonderful power of Krishna as displayed when the Lord delivered the king of the elephants. Remember the scene that Krishna came along with all the demigods, with Garuda, everyone bedecked with golds and jewels and turbans and crowns, and Gajendra's there with a lotus flower in his trunk, and the crocodiles, It's quite a dramatic scene. Okay. Now, where were we? Oh, best of the Kuru dynasty. Those who hear this narration. Now, this is the thing. What is the use? You're there at the Hare Krishna temple. You could be in your warm bed, or you could be out jogging. You could be, I don't know what. What are they doing in the morning? So many. You are walking your dog, drinking a cup of coffee. And here you are at the Hare Krishna temple. What's the use? Well, according to Bhagavatam, here's a description. O best of the Kuru dynasty, those who hear this narration become fit to be promoted to the higher planetary systems. Simply because of hearing this narration, they gain a reputation as devotees. They're unaffected by contamination of Kali Yuga, and they never see bad dreams. Sounds like a pretty good deal to me. Om Ganata Mirandasya Gana Gana Salakaya Jakshusha Militangena Tazareshi Gurave Namaha. Now I was asked, because we never got around to it, to describe about the different denizens of the heavenly planets, and so we're going to do that today, and there's no purport to this verse. So I thought I would slip that in because it's talking about the wonderful mystic power of Krishna. I mean, we were saying the other day, there don't seem to be as many as there used to be, but there used to always be somebody coming from India who could make a little ash or a little jewel or something, If he got real warmed up, I guess he had to warm up his engines first, but he could make, that Sai Baba could make a little plastic jewel with a picture of you inside. Oh, yeah. Very impressive. Or, float a glass of water. What about the person who's floating billions of tons of, water in the sky in the form of clouds? But that's, So, what does it mean that we're all God, or, I'm God, you're God, and we roll it all into one big ball, and that's, well, okay. But while I wasn't God, I think it's the Mormons who say God is what we we are what God will become. I forget what it is, but they've got some idea that we evolve into God. I'm trying to think how that goes. God is what we were. I don't know, whatever it is. It's something like that. but that somehow or other we all become God eventually. Well, okay, while we're becoming God, who's running the show in the meantime? You know, until we take over the wheel, there's somebody driving the bus, so who's that? Huh? No, it's just all, they're not very thoughtful. So here it's describing the real scene. Now we may say, well, this is wishful thinking, it's fantasy. But if you're dealing with I was in some airport somewhere, and on the television they had, it was called the Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous or something like that. And it was all about people who had giant houses. I mean, who's got to clean that thing? It's a lot of work, you know. But anyway, these big giant houses. And was okay. Well, think for a minute. If there actually is a cause of all causes, the source of all thing, if there actually is Bhagavan, who has all opulences, well, just follow the logic. Like they say, follow the bouncing ball. What would your house look like? Would you have, you know, I don't know what, a gold-plated gate or something? I mean, that's not that much. But when you think about Vaikuntha, well, now we're talking. Or God being all attractive, ever youthful. When he speaks, it's Bhagavad Gita. It's perfect philosophy and poetry and completely soothing. And that's just one touch of his opulence. That's just talking just a slice of his knowledge. So, and when Krishna's strength, I mean, if he's holding up all the planets, they can't explain what gravity is. Imagine the strength of Krishna. Well, how do you expect to believe that a 6-year-old boy, 6 or 7, lifted Govardhan Hill? Well, he's God. How about that one? You didn't think about that, did you? So it's describing here who we're dealing with. We're dealing with Krishna. Hold on a sec. Okay, so, and we're going to get to the planets in a minute. But just because to make sure it's clear, the elephant Gajendra, he was a self-realized devotee who was sitting in silent meditation. And Agastya Muni came along, kind of like the pastime with the yogi, the rishi who cursed Parikshit. Because he was absorbed in meditation on Krishna, he didn't get up. He didn't offer his respects to Agastya Muni, which goes to show, be careful when you're dealing with sages and saints and you don't know what's, you know. So he didn't get up because he didn't see him. He was absorbed in meditation. And so he was cursed. You're sitting like a dumb person. Dumb means, you know, not speaking, not hearing, not moving. So you're sitting like a dumb person. I curse you to become an elephant. The crocodile was a demigod who was he was a king of the Vidyadharas, and he was a Huhu. His name was King Huhu. And when he was sporting with his lady friends, he grabbed a sage who was also bathing in the river, and he grabbed his leg, pulled his leg, embraced his leg or whatever. And he said, hey, sage, what is this, you lusty king? And cursed him to become a crocodile. So they were both cursed. So you think, well, what's with these sages? They're cursing people. I thought you're supposed to be... I remember Prabhupada got angry one time in the old LA temple. There was an impersonal philosopher. It's a long story. We'll skip going into it. But he challenged Prabhupada. He was from Caltech, and he was a Sanskrit professor. And he challenged Prabhupada that this is just sentiment and the real meaning of the Vedas was, And Prabhupada became transcendently angry. Because I started, I'll finish. It was something wonderful because Prabhupada wouldn't even look at him. Prabhupada was sitting on the Vyasasana just chanting, because, Prabhupada gave his talk, and then he asked for questions and answers. And this guy stood up and said, basically he was saying that this kirtan is for sentimental old ladies, and the real thing is you should be studying the 4 Vedas and meditating on Sanskrit, and this is all sentiment. That was his presentation. And kirtan's a waste of time and for sentimentalists. And Prabhupada didn't even look at him. He wouldn't even give him the time of day. He was just chanting like this and that. And then when the man finally ran out of steam, he was standing up. A man stood up. And Prabhupada began that in this Purana and in this Upanishad and in this Veda and in this, and just, it was like driving a spike into the ground. The man was standing, and then he was kind of crouched a bit, then he was sitting, and ultimately he could have melted into the floor. And the most far out part is when he finished, and Prabhupada was, he offended Krishna and offended the Vedas and offended the Narada Muni and Vyasadeva. And so Prabhupada, what do they say, cut him down to size? And then when Prabhupada finished, and the guy was completely defeated, to his credit, this big professor raised his hand and said, Swami, can we have kirtan? Which was him admitting defeat. He admitted defeat. So, yeah. So, it's wonderful. So, who are we and what do we know? One of the symptoms of Kali Yuga is they're so arrogant. And it's one thing to be a fool, but when you're a fool and don't even know it, and are claiming to be learned. I was looking for a marble shop in Tijuana, a marble yard. That's where we got these little tables, and I was getting the marble cut for them in Tijuana. And in my pedestrian Spanish, donde está ese, whatever it is, Factoria de whatever, who knows what I actually said. But I tried to ask, where's this marble shop? And there were 3 guys on the corner, and they each enthusiastically pointed in a different direction. One guy pointed this way, one guy pointed this way, another guy pointed this way. And to their credit, they looked at each other and saw they were all pointing in it. They laughed. They said, actually, we don't know. We just didn't want to disappoint you. We were trying to help you out, but we have no idea. So what do we know about anything? And yet we're thinking, if God is unlimited, then how can we say he can't do this? You're dealing with Krishna. It should be absolutely stunning. It should be amazing. So in this pastime, actually the elephant, Gajendra, was a devotee. And to tell you the truth, as Prabhupada says later on in this chapter, Prabhupada says that actually he didn't really care about getting out of the elephant body, or he didn't care about he really wanted to go back to Godhead, but he'd become entangled, and he was praying. So not the crocodile, not only was it a real crocodile that snapped onto his leg, but this whole material world, Prabhupada calls it the crocodile of time. Nobody escapes. Vaikuntha Prabhu and I one time were in, where were we? We were in the Yucatan in Mexico, Merida, outside this little city called Merida. And the guy who owned the hotel had 3 crocodiles, big. I mean, they were like 18 feet long. They were big crocodiles. And that thing is mean. They are, So the Bhagavatam compares that crocodile to the crocodile of time. Krishna says, time I am, the destroyer of all things. So if you just think about it for a minute, anybody here want to become old? Suppose I had Swami's magic wand. Of course, some of us are already nearing the edge there, or in my case, over the edge. But anybody here? Suresh. Hey, Suresh, you want to become 80 years old? Why? Who wants to, So it devours everything, and nobody can stop time. Nobody, you can be the Roman Empire, you can be whoever it is. Who's the John Wayne who dropped dead from cancer? Who conquers time? So the simple point is that we're all in the grip of time. The crocodile time, it devours all things, and only Krishna can save us. And that's the only solution. Trump can't save you, nobody can save you, but Krishna can save you because he's the master of all mystic powers. Okay, so what I wanted to read is hold on a sec here. The universe is divided into 14 regions. This is from Prabhupada's purports. The earthly region, wherein the human beings dwell, that's us, is called Buraloka. Above is Bhuvaloka, where the living entities are Antarikshasthana, the denizens of outer space, and the Madhyamasthana, denizens of the planets between earth and heaven dwell. So there's the middle planets. It's got planets like us in the middle of the earth. And there's also some subtle planets. Sariputta was explaining that they're not quite heavenly planets. And that's where these people zipping around on, spaceships, what do they call it? Vimanas or space. They're relatively nearby to us. And then above that are the heavenly planets. Above it is Swargaloka, the heaven of the Karma Devatas, or the 33 million demigods who've been raised to heaven by pious karma performed in previous lives. Now, in those, there's the Dityas and the Daityas. There are 12 Dityas, and they're referred to in the Gita. There were 2 sisters, Aditi and Aditi and Diti. And Diti and Aditi, Diti was the mother of the Daityas, or the demons, Asuras, and Aditi was the mother of the demigods. So, and their father was, for 10 extra points, Kasyapa. And then you've got, so there it is. And Vamanadev came as the youngest son of Mother Aditi. This is the world this is what's actually happening out there. We can see. If I blow a dog whistle, you can't hear it. So many things we have a narrow spectrum. I put a prism up to the light. There's so many shades that previously we couldn't see. So what do we actually see? We have a little tiny corner. That's all. So then there's the apsaras. These are just some of the samplings. These are the lovely dancing girls who consort with the Gandharvas and other handsome residents of heaven. There's the Charnas, angelic beings who fly in the sky without vehicles. They have the power to appear and disappear in various ways according to the varieties of meditation. The inhabitants of Vidyaraloka are naturally endowed with mystic power, by which they can not only fly in outer space without a vehicle, but can also fly from one planet to another, simply by exerting their will. Just as fish can swim in the water, when you think about it, that's a pretty amazing thing. They're just playing in the water, swimming back and forth. We can't do that. They can't walk on the land. So there's those that can fly in the air. And they're called the Vidyadharas. They can fly from one planet to another. The Gandharvas, they're celestial musicians who subtly inspire earthly musicians. Like a muse, Mozart, where did he get it? So maybe he had a Gandharva help him. I was in Detroit one time, and we were invited to speak at a Catholic high school. So I had the address, and I remember pulling up, and I saw the name of it. It was called Descent of the Holy Name Catholic High School, which I thought, well, this is going to be fun. And they had out in the patio, somebody asked me, that's where I don't want to get too far afield, but that's where the nun asked me after a couple classes. She raised her hand quite passionately and said, tell them about your mortifications of the flesh. And I remember thinking, mortifications of the flesh? What she, like they wear those camel hair clothing that are scratchy and uncomfortable, and they have a whip that they flagellate themselves, whip themselves so they feel the sufferings of Christ. I mean, it's a rough boat. So I was thinking, well, what is she talking about, And then I realized she was talking about the 4 regulative principles. I mean, we call them the regulative principles of freedom. But, and you become free from intoxicating and eating all rubbish things, and free from chasing after women or chasing after men. It's freedom. It's, thank heaven. Krishna's intoxication. It's right there in the label, toxic. So, anyway, the point is, they asked me, what is the difference between the Bible and your scripture? And I said, actually, they have the same theme, the same principle, the same theme, and, different teachers. You look at a diamond from different angles. It looks, different, different angles, but it's the same diamond. I said, but I'll give you an example. In your Bible, you have angels, but that's all you know. We can tell you they're called Gandharvas. They're called the winged singers of heaven. We can tell you where their planet is. We can tell you how you could become one if you want one. We can tell you the different grades of Gandharvas. Like Narada Muni in a previous life was a Gandharva. That's the difference. You've got a pocket dictionary, and we've got the unabridged Oxford. That's the difference. So we're going to keep going, just so you have an idea of who's out there. We're not, what is it? We are not alone. This is the thing they say about it. So now there's also ghosts and witches, and they have categories. There's the pretas, the pishachas, the bhutasaras, anyway, there's a list of about 15 different types. You could become a ghost if you commit suicide, if you die all of a sudden out of fright, if you die in the mode of ignorance, especially if you're intoxicated. In Nectar of Devotion, it describes how there's witches that can fly in the sky riding on a broom. Huh? It says branch. I'm sorry, you're right. It says branch. So, but I've seen, old-fashioned fairy tales, and they've got the witch, and they suck blood out of babies and stuff like that, So guess what, Prabhus? There's a whole species of them. There it is. Kirtanananda told me that Prabhupada was traveling in India, and they stayed at a life member's house. And it was it'd been around since, before the British Raj and this and that. And Prabhupada was, he was bringing in the luggage out of the car, and Prabhupada was staying, they showed Prabhupada where he was staying. And so when he came in with Prabhupada's suitcase into Prabhupada's room, Prabhupada was going with his cane. He was going like this along the baseboard, where the wall hits the floor. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Hare Ram, Ram, Ram. Kirtananda said, Prabhupada, what are you doing? Prabhupada said, chasing out the ghosts. Just like you'd chase out a mouse or a cat. Hey, move on. I'm here now, So who knows who's out there and what's going on? But Bhagavatam knows. I mean, everywhere you look, they just looked. They've done it earlier, and now they've done it again. It's at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. The Mariana Trench is off the coast of Japan. And it's something like 3,000, 13,000, 30,000. It's the deepest place in the ocean that they found. It's the deepest. So there's no light, there's no oxygen, and it's under incredible pressure because it's under all that water. And if that wasn't enough, there's all kinds of fissures, cracks in the Earth's crust, and it's got all kinds of toxic gas that's coming out. It's completely poisonous and hot, like 2,000 degrees. Yeah, it's super hot. It's from the center of the Earth. It's teeming with life. It's got all kinds of little microbes and things that are feasting on each other. It's teeming with life. There's no reason there should be life there. So the point is, wherever you look, there actually is life. If I go down to the ocean and I take a snapshot of the ocean, unless there's a flying fish or a breaching whale, you don't see anything. It's just water, right? But we all know if you can enter into the ocean, there's so many fish, giant fish, all kinds of far out things happening in there. So if you have the right body to enter into the climate, there's living entities everywhere. So anyway,
36,000 feet.
36,000. I wasn't making it up. So there's Kinnaras and Kimpurushas. Now, Kinnaras and Kimpurushas, Garuda is one, Hanuman is one. They're half human and half animal features. Garuda, of course, there's Garuda right there. Hanuman, So they're called Kimpurushas, and they're from the Kinnara planetary system. They can take on other shapes, too. They have the bodily features like those of human beings, but they also have wings sometimes. They're expert at singing, the Kinnaras. They can change their form at will. These are little excerpts from different purports, the Kinnaras. But I guess as a general rule, half human, half some type of animal. There's the Nagas. Nagaloka is situated below the earthly planetary system. The Naga planet is situated, that I read, and it's understood that the sun rays are hampered there. The darkness of the planet, however, is removed by the flashes of the jewels set on the heads of the Nagas, the celestial serpents. It's also said that they're beautiful gardens, rivulets for the enjoyments of the Nagas. That's another planet. There's so many planetary systems. There's also Patalaloka, Nagaloka, many demonic serpents, and he gives a whole list of all the different devas. The chief amongst the Nagalokas is Vashuki. Vashuki was used to churn the tortoise. Yeah, yeah. When the damage comes in handy now and then. Some have 5 hoods, some have 7 hoods, some have 10 hoods, some have 100 hoods, some have 1,000 hoods. The hoods are bedecked with valuable gems, and the light emanating from those gems illuminate the entire planetary system of Bilaswarga. That's another place it's at. The Rakshasa, there's a planet for them. There are man-eaters who can have black magic powers. They can look like a beautiful man or a beautiful woman or a handsome man, or they can shift into a man-eating Rakshasa. There's Rudras. Chief of the Rudras is Lord Shiva. There's 11 primary Rudras, and they've got all their relatives. There's the Siddhas. As far as the inhabitants of Siddhaloka are concerned, Prabhupada just mentions in one of the purports, they're endowed with all mystic power. And he lists them, yama, niyama, all the, to obtain anything from a distant place. They can become smaller than the smallest, heavier than the heaviest. They can even manufacture an entire planet, get whatever they like, and control whatever man they want. All the siddhas, all the residents of siddha are naturally endowed with these mystic powers. Well, just like a bird, a little sparrow jumps and can fly in the sky. So they're just born with mystic powers. They got all kinds. You look at all the different entities. Anyway, there's the Vasus. Agni is the chief. Bhishma Dev was one of the 8 Vasus. You can worship them if you want money. It could come in handy. We'll just zip the. There's Vidyadharas. They're angels with wings. Now, there's some living entities in the heavenly planets that have wings so they can fly. But there's others who just fly by their own mystic power. Like ever dream that you're flying in your sleep?
Yes.
Yeah. Anybody? Well, it's not a true confession moment, but if you've ever... You don't have wings, but you just will that you can fly. So there's some living entities who maybe it was from a past life when you could actually just fly. But if you want wings, you can also get wings. And we think that's the point I wanted to. Well, we'll finish this. There's Yakshashas. That's the Kuvera, the treasure of the demigods. There's the Yakshasha that we read. And there's one other thing I wanted to read. But we think we're such big stuff. You're like a little kid that thinks I saw some kids, they had one of those crowns from McDonald's, or maybe it was Burger King. I guess it's Burger King. And they were playing, there was a pile of dirt over by my house. They're doing some construction. And they, I'm king of the hill, and the other kids were pushing him off, and whoever was the king got to wear the crown. I was what? But they're just kids. They're playing with a paper crown, and they're pushing each other around, and they think they're such big stuff. So who are we? Well, I think, as far as I can see. What's Prabhupada's famous retort when someone says, as far as I can see? Prabhupada said, that's my point. How far can you see? So we should be a little humble. And before we criticize the sages, and before we criticize the Bhagavatam, or before we say, well, that's too much. That's just too much. Who are you? And when did you become you can't even walk down the street without tripping. So, and I just wanted to finish with one last thing, because it is time. This is each planet and different demigods, chief demigods, they have their own carrier. Like the president has, they call it the beast. He's got a bulletproof car, or some super rich guy has a Maserati, or I don't know what, they've got some fancy car. Schwarzenegger used to have one of the first SUV, and not SUVs, what are those, Humvee, So you got a vehicle that you can feel fancy in. I think Queen Elizabeth, they have their carriages that they ride in. Well, you think that's hot stuff? It'll just take a sec. Vishnu rides on Garuda, of course. Shiva rides on a bull. Brahma on a swan. Lakshmi on an owl. Surya on a chariot. Indra on an elephant. Vayu on it's called a Kanjana bird, which has big, beautiful eyes. Yamaraj rides on a buffalo. Kuvera on a flower chariot. Chandra on a deer. Agni on a ram. Varuna on a mystical shark. Kartik on a peacock, Skanda, Saraswati on a swan, and Durga on a lion. So they've got their own vehicles. And just to finish, the Earth rides on a platform resting on 4 elephants for the 4 cardinal directions. Mars is on a gorilla, Mercury on a rooster, Jupiter on a black stag, Venus on an ox, Saturn on a crow, and Rahu on a camel. So we live in a mystical universe, and we're trying to squeeze it all down into a little tiny pedestrian box, and if we don't understand it and we can't see it, it doesn't exist. Meanwhile, this mystical, fantastic universe is emanating from just a small portion of the supreme. What does Krishna say in Gita? But by a spark of my splendor, I sustain all things. So we can in there, because it's time. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Next time you think you're fancy, because you've got a new model Ford, think about riding on a swan.